I'm going to tell you and prove to you where you come from as a human, not the Bible. So this is where I debunk the Bible, unfortunately. Okay, so this here is transcripts of Sumerian tablets in the Oxford University on their website. Now, this isn't Sitchin, so when people say, oh, Sitchin's wrong, unfortunately, other people have translated it. So I'm just picking a particular bit here which tells us how we were thought of at the beginning. Enki, the fashioner of designs by himself, had pondered the matter and said to his mother, Namna, my mother, the creature, which is us humans, you planned will really come into existence, and we can give him work of carrying the baskets. Now, obviously, if that's an almighty being, why would he need humans to carry baskets? Unless it was Anunnaki who needed humans to carry the gold and the rocks out of the mining, which they were doing. You should need the clay. Now, that's because when they tried to use their own materials, in other words, their tech, for whatever reason, it wasn't working, so they needed to use bowls made from earth. Anyway, from the top of the Abs, which was South Africa, which is exactly where they say the first Homo sapien come from. And then they talk about Nimna here being one of them, and then they talk about the 7 other females that eventually gave birth to the first 7 males and first 7 females in the Abzu, South Africa. And then it obviously carries on. You can read all of this on their site. Now let's just have a look where we're talking about the clay, etc. What Genesis, for example, would say. And then the Lord God. Now Lord is Enki, so we're learning something now. We always knew it was Enki, and God is Elohim. So the Enki Elohim formed man from the clay of the earth and breathed life into his face and breathed life the man that came living soul. So basically you can see this is a copy of the older text, a copy. And obviously the Egyptians, also older, according to the Egyptian mythology, God Kunam created human children from clay before placing them into their mother's womb, which is exactly what this says, where they impregnated Nimna and the other women to create the children. Now, when they say children, it's because we are tiny compared to them. They were 8 to 12 foot tall, so they always called us little people. So I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to do other videos on other reasons why, proof why we are from the Anunnaki. If you believe this is our true history, then move along. This video is not for you. However, if you believe that we are genetically modified from Neanderthal and aliens to create humans, then keep watching, because I've got the proof you need. So over here in the Oxford University, they've translated many of the tablets, and one of them says, Enki, the Lord of true words, I will praise you, your father and the king, the Lord who caused human seed to come forth and who placed all mankind on earth. Now, that's not an almighty being, is it, when you've got the word Enki? And also, if you look here, Enki and Nimna were trying to create the first human, and as you see here in their translations, it basically says that many of them failed for different reasons, feet broken, etc., and then eventually they got to the first one. Now, that is not an almighty being. That's why some of you are descendants of angels. Now, really, there's no such thing as an angel. There is guardian spirits. Don't get them mixed up. But an angel, the original word was actually messenger in Hebrew, and that was based off of a Greek word. Now, the Anunnaki actually did call messengers. So as you see here, this is a translation in the Oxford University, as well as Sitchin, as well as many other people's translated these ancient tablets, the oldest tablets ever in the world. And instead of naming people, the Anunnaki actually called them messengers. So a messenger is basically an angel. So next time you read the Bible or anything, replace the word angel with messenger. And that even goes for fallen angels, who were the Igigi or Igigi, and that translates to the watchers or the eye in the sky. So the Igigi came down and stole human women and had children with them, which is why some of you are descendants of angels, but not really angels, messengers. I know there's people out there that believe God is Lord and Lord is God, as well as a few other names, and I thought I'd just point out once and for all that it's not. Now, God is, translation is Elohim, which is the Anunnaki's race name. They're the people that came down and created humans and got us to mine for gold. Now, this previous part that I'm about to read talks about Enki, which was one of the sons of King Anu, who lives on Nibiru, which is their home planet. Enki was in Abzu, which is pretty much South Africa, and he was very pleased with himself that he'd just set up a whole sort of station and everything. So I'm just going to read this part out here. In a state of high delight, Enki, the king of the Abzu, rejoices in great splendor. Again, justifies praising himself. I am the Lord. I am the one whose word is reliable. So there you go. I've been asked to show what the Anunnaki look like on AI, which is artificial intelligence. So I've just typed in the word literally Anunnaki, and this is what we get. So this is a sort of stone carving type thing that the computers created, and this was done using stable diffusion. There's 4 different ones here. And I've then done it on DALL-E 2, which basically said the safety filters didn't allow the word Anunnaki, which I thought quite interesting. And I'll show you Midjourney now. So the same word Anunnaki in Midjourney shows this, which is interesting. Now I want to show you what Anunnaki plus the name Enki now. Stable diffusion now with the name Enki as well as Anunnaki. So you can kind of see what they're doing there. But I went for DALL-E 2 and asked for just Enki, and this is what it gave me. So DALL-E 2 and the Anunnaki is not so good. And Midjourney with the name Enki and Anunnaki. This person's referring to these carvings of what I said were Anunnaki, because they had the beard and they had the bow and arrows and they had the turban, etc. And this person said they're not Anunnaki. So I just pointed out what Anunnakis look like. There we are, beard, turban, and even we have other carvings of them firing bow and arrows, just like the one that's recently been found in Iraq, which is great. That's the one recently. Now, here's another image of the Anunnaki. Now, there is a possibility that this particular carving is from demigods, in other words, offspring or younger Anunnaki. And the reason why I say that is because the main Anunnaki generally are depicted with wings, and that's because they come from Nibiru, and that's the thing. So, in fact, Zachariah Sitchin said that this particular emblem here is a shield, so to speak, for Nibiru, their home planet. So that's their sort of logo emblem. Breaking news from literally just one day ago, in Iraq they have now found more carvings of, yes, you've guessed it, who do they look like? Anunnaki. And the reason why it's important is because the ISIS group supposedly went in there and tried to destroy everything. And if you believe it was the ISIS group, I've got some fresh air I can sell you. Now, there is footage of them going in there, but it wasn't them. It was the Americans going in deliberately to break up our true history. Now, here it says mainstream National Geographic, all the new mainstream will force this down your throat. ISIS hates archaeology, and it's not. And that's because, obviously, once you realise that the Anunnaki were here, they didn't really want us to do this. And also, a couple of days ago, in Iraq, they've opened up a park where they found, again, more ancient carvings. Do you want to know everything there is to know about ghosts, spirits, entities, orbs, light energy beings, what happens after you die, etc.? I am doing a series of videos, and they're on Patreon. My Patreon page, which is called Our True History. It's called Everything You Need to Know About Spirits. This one's segment 2 that's there, segment 1, and so on. And these are quite long videos, in fact. And they're not just filmed at the screen, they are actually properly edited, because I am actually an editor by trade, as well as many other things. So you'll see all this proper information given to you properly on proper videos. And it covers everything. It covers from how the spirits got here, where they come from, how many there are of them, why we don't have spirits ourselves, but we actually get connected with a separate spirit. It talks about reincarnation, and I mean, goes into detail. We're given better than the videos I've done on TikTok. I actually give information. And also there's plenty of other things on my Patreon page, other videos and live chat. I keep getting people sending me this link to this mermaid footage. It was actually about 10 years old. And when I first watched it on TV, first thing I done was went to IMDb and screenshotted the photographs of the actors and then married them up with other films that they've been in. Unfortunately, people still seem to think this particular video is genuine. Now, these were the characters in the video, and you may have seen the video where the mermaid touches the glass of a submarine, and even you know, news channels have admitted that they were actors.
But it was all in the name of entertainment, and it turns out Dr. Robertson is not really a scientist. So many viewers were fooled. Noah.
So all you had to do, instead of keep sending me that video, is just go to IMDb and see their names, Mermaids and New Evidence, and then obviously click through and you'll find them. They've been in other movies, etc. Oh, there he is. Okay, I admit I'm wrong. So this person was saying that he'd seen pictures of old mobile phones from the 1800s because it was they belonged to the Tatarian Empire. So I did some Googling, and yeah, you're right, there is. Look at this picture here. I can't believe it. I mean, it is a mobile phone, isn't it? You're right. However, so is this one. And I've just used a computer art program called Midjourney. I've also got DALL-E 2. So I could type in anything and show you it. And because you have accepted that a photograph, or let's just be honest, a picture on the internet is acceptable proof, I thought I'd just knock this out to prove that, you know, let's be honest, anyone can. So that's why, if you can actually show me where this mobile phone is, not this one because this is fake, this is one I just done on the computer, but if you can show me where these real mobile phones from the 1800s are now, that'd be great. Thanks.
In a time before humans, on a planet called Nibiru, there was a race called Elohim. Oh, they had issues with their atmosphere. They had to do something to repair. That's when they thought of coming here to mine for gold and save their sons were sent to Key. They set a beast in Eridu. The seventh day to always rest in peace. Only 900 came far to view. Some set up an away station on Mars. Some went to Absukin, Anu named the group. Anunnaki and Debunking, mining was hard in South Africa. The Anunnaki rebelled, forcing Enki to greet a worker race from Neanderthals, endless state in power. Wanted more power. Marduk used the newly created humans to build a sky tower. Enlil destroyed the tower and made the humans learn different languages. This didn't stop Marduk. He changed his name to Amun-Ra. He gathered Marduk was to marry a human woman. The Ichiji on Mars were invited. They came down and stole human women for their wives. Some of their children grew taller than them, up to 36 feet. And had grown strong. The granddaughter of Enlil wanted Marduk gone. Ferocious battles ensued. The humans were expendable. Nibiru was coming close to Earth. That disaster would fall. ice shelf from Antarctica was about to slip into the ocean. The Anunnaki knew this and was happy for the humans and giants to perish. The deluge came, but some survived. Enki saved Astra Hashish with an ark. After the flood, the Anunnaki agreed to let humans inherit the earth, first teaching them in Sumerian. But how do we know all this? Visit our true history. .co.uk. Visit our true history.
As promised, I said I would do a reading from the translations of the ancient alien texts, the Sumerian text, that was done by Oxford University. And this is different than Sitchin's text, because he would paraphrase in his Lost Book of Enki, whereas I actually read word for word as best I can. I'm not great at reading, so apologies for that. I was in special needs at school. But you can watch the video. It's now up. It's on Our True History on the patreon.com. So patreon.com, type in Our True History. And the one you can watch is translation number 1, so I will be doing more. And this is a reading from me from the Anunnaki text, and it's to do with Enki and Ninha saga. And it covers, as it goes through, I explain things that you may not know, who's who, where they're talking about, and some other little tidbits that you probably wouldn't know if you didn't already do the research. So have a watch. No, a pyramid is not a tomb. Now you could argue, well, hang on a minute, there's a sarcophagus in the king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, but that is not a sarcophagus. No bodies were ever found in any pyramids, ever, regardless of what people say. Watch my videos and you'll see. Now, this is a granite box, and I'm going to be telling you over the next few videos what this was made for. And I'm the only person that's ever come up with this, so if you ever hear it again, just remember Our True History is the place to go. Feel free to visit my website as well, ourtruehistory.co.uk. Now, these granite boxes sometimes have lids. The one in the Grand Gallery or King's Chamber doesn't have a lid, but this one does. Now, the granite boxes, as you can see here, absolutely weigh a ton, and they're absolutely huge, and some do have lids. Running out of time, keep watching for the answer. In Egypt, there's a place called Serapeum, and it's underground, deep underground. And inside it has these granite boxes with lids. And these weigh 80 tons and at least 20 tons for the lid. Now, if you believe mainstream, where they say these were built to put an animal, a bull remains inside, then move along if you believe that. Now, this is what it looks like from a sort of that perspective, and I'll show you the map here. So these are where some of what people call sarcophaguses, I call them boxes. Now I'm going to be telling you why they've buried these boxes underground, and no, it wasn't for the bulls. And if you look here, you'll see another one kind of buried. So when you start researching these boxes, you find that they're generally in places that they want out of the way. Keep watching for more. Following on from the last two videos about what these granite boxes are actually for in antiquity times, just noticed here that there's a wooden floor of some description raised, and if you ever see that in Egypt or around ancient sites, generally it normally means that the powers that be are hiding stuff from us. So if you ever see a wooden platform somewhere, chances are underneath is something more important. So getting back to these granite boxes. Now, as you've probably worked out already, the one in the King's Chamber is also, surrounded by rock. Now, this is the most interesting part. Can granite shield from radiation? It is one of the best ways to shield from radiation, according to this. So now we're at the reason why these are absolutely buried. Keep watching for more. If you've watched my last 3 videos, you realise that I have concluded that the granite boxes in antiquity, such as this one and the one in the King's Chamber, can actually shield from radiation. So in other words, these aren't designed for a sarcophagus, these were designed to keep in radiation, which makes a lot of sense when you realize some of these are absolutely buried really deep, 60 foot underground. Now, when you go to look at the size of the Ark of the Covenant, which people say actually had radiation, and that's not me just saying that, here it's saying incense was used to protect the priests and people from radiation burn from the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant, actually, the size of it matches the size here inside. So in other words, the Ark of the Covenant was a power device. This would protect it from producing radiation. The Great Pyramid was built to produce a light beam that went up into space. Watch my previous videos and you'll see that no one's debunked me. Thousands of people watched it, because I point out the fact that this isn't the actual Great Pyramid, this is just a picture, but the Great Pyramid has a hole at the top where a shaft that's supposed to goes off to Orion doesn't actually ever penetrate the outside of the pyramid. So I don't know why people even thought that, but it actually turns up and goes upwards to the top, which is how the light beam, but it needed a power source. Obviously it's on the ley lines, and inside the King's Chamber is this granite box. Now this granite box, if you watch my previous 4 videos, you will know myself have concluded that these scientifically do stop radiation. So when you've got a power source inside, and according to ancient text it was a pulsating crystals, when you've got them inside, this will protect the outside from having radiation. So please watch my previous 4 videos about other granite boxes as well. Now the Ark of the Covenant, anyone will tell you that inside there was some type of power source that would produce radiation, because excuse me, the priests etc had to keep changing over because their eyes kept melting and basically had radiation poisoning. Now the supposed location now of one of these Ark of the Covenants, there was more than one, bearing in mind the Ark of the Covenant, actually the size of it fits perfectly into the granite box here. So even here it says that the priests that look after or monks that look after the Ark of the Covenant in this church chapel type thing, they have to keep swapping out every 5 years because basically they get radiation poisoning. So everything leads to the fact that these granite boxes were made by the Anunnaki to keep in radiation, and that is found out by our true history, which is me. No one else has thought of that. I'm now back talking about ancient India after doing my Atlantis videos. Feel free to watch those. Now there's a place called Ellora Caves in India, which is absolutely fascinating. They've got many different carvings, etc. Now one of the carvings shows a figure with a device attached to its back, and the actual description of this device is something then the word Vimana. Now I can't pronounce the first part, but basically it means, in my opinion, that it's a personal flying vehicle. Now if you see here this person, which would have been an Anunnaki offspring or someone directly DNA created for the Anunnaki, watch my previous videos, you'll see what I'm talking about. And here's some straps that goes around the back. Now we're really lucky that they actually show this, because back in the olden times, as written, they were not allowed to actually describe or show images of flying anything that's not human, basically. That's why we used to have what they called skyboats in ancient times, such as... Did the ancient Indians actually have guns before everyone else? Now the oldest known guns was 1000 AD, but these carvings and many others of Indians holding guns predate that by a very, very long time. So if you've watched my previous videos, you'll see that Inanna was given the Indus Valley, and she was an Anunnaki, which obviously would have had tech or been able to create tech for her people. So she was in charge of the Indian people at that period. Now there's a Greek philosopher called Philus who actually wrote about Alexander, and the reason why he turned back from India wasn't because his men got tired, as supposedly the normal story goes. He said that they were attacked by tempests and thunderbolts coming from walls, which suggests to me that there was firepower. Anyone live in America? Wisconsin, near Rock Lake. Well, supposedly there is this pyramid structure under the water in the Rock Lake, which is about 20 foot high, but supposedly would carry on going down if there wasn't mud, etc. there. Now, the locals say that the story is that there was a race about 10,000 years ago that built this. They may have built it before 10,000 years ago, but the race had to leave the area due to a flood, which actually matches my estimate of when Ann Sitchins, as well as many other people, including the ancient tablets, of the Great Flood for about 10,000 years ago. So that would make sense why it was covered over. Now, the interesting thing is, would this structure have been on a ley line like many of the other pyramids and big monuments that were ancient? Well, funny enough, here it does actually say the prominent Wisconsin ley line just goes right by Rock Lake's pyramid. So this guy's name is Brian Forrester, and he is absolutely amazing at looking at old buildings and stating the facts that they are actually older than what we're being told. However, this isn't a debunking video. I just think he's got some dates wrong. He may not understand or know much about Sumerians to understand the correlation between the nuclear weapons they had and the time frame that they were used. So have a listen to this. He's talking about an explosion of some sort.
So from my estimation, this plasma ball would have been approximately 60 feet in diameter and would have gone straight down what is called the sacred original passageway.
So basically what he's saying is the intense heat from a solar flare came down, didn't really hit much of that, only hit the bottom of this. But the same solar flare would have then also took out many other places, which I'll get to in a sec. So the logic there just doesn't sit right with me. You can't just have a solar flare come and hit the bottom of something. It just doesn't work. So I don't think he was aware of the ancient tablets. Now, have a listen to this.
The hieroglyphics on the left look like they were done with a machine, whereas the ones on the right look like they were done by hand. So the hieroglyphics on the left are pre-dynastic, the ones on the right are dynastic, and that gives us the strong
So what he's saying is 12,000 years ago these were done by, let's be honest, the Anunnaki, and 9,000 years ago, because that's when humans were started to be taught, anywhere from 9,000 towards now, these were done by humans. However, if you carry on watching,
possibility that hieroglyphics were not created by the dynastic people, but were an inheritance, and they were reinterpreted by the dynastic people. Same symbols, different symbolism.
So this one's extreme heat. So what he's saying is this, because it's nicely done, he believes that this was older than when people were building them. However, what benefit would there have been for the Anunnaki to start writing, hieroglyphics when no human at that point would have been able to read them? And that's going by his estimate. And also here, another one that he's showing is again superheated, etc. In other words, burnt by some sort of explosion. Now, my dates would be 3,000 to 4,000 years ago when the Anunnaki used those nuclear weapons. And as far as I'm aware, prior to the Egyptian start, there wouldn't have been any carvings like this, because again, no one would have been able to understand how to worship if no one was taught until at least 9,000 years ago. So he's saying these were 12,000 years ago. So these are just my dates. Make up your own mind. Breaking news. Antarctica has lakes underneath the ice. Now, that's not breaking news really, because we knew about this 20 years ago. But what we didn't know until a few days ago is that they're actually connected, which now makes it longer, one of these lakes, longer than the Thames in the United Kingdom, and it goes off into Weddell Sea. So, underneath the ice is land, and it had lakes, which means there would have been fresh water. So if, as some people suggest, there was a race that lived on Antarctica before the ice came and covered it over, so it was just a land, it wasn't extra land. So anyone that tells you it's extra land and it's flat, etc., it's just land. Now, there are some reports that there were people that did live there. Some people say there was giants, some people say it was an alien race. But whatever it was, before the ice, they certainly could have had a civilization there, simply because of the Let me know if you like these videos that I'm doing where I'm reading out actual ancient texts. I have got loads more on my Patreon page, a lot longer ones, etc. But this one's a short one, so I thought I'd do it on the TikTok. And this is basically one of the people that actually translated it first thought it was part of the creation story. Now there's tablets called the creation story, which is pretty much the human release, which is in the British Museum. So I'll read it out here because you can actually see it clearly here. When the gods in their assembly had made, and then in brackets, the world. Now, their assembly. So basically, in the ancient texts, you'll find that the gods were planets. So they would call them deities. So when the planets smashed into each other and eventually assembled this world, and had created the heavens, plural there, and formed the earth. You can see why people thought it was an almighty being. And had brought living creatures into being, and had fashioned the cattle of the field and the beasts of the field and the creatures of the city, after they had unto the living creatures ... and between the beasts of the field and the creatures of the city had divided ... and had, don't worry, I'm getting to a point, and had all the creatures of the whole creation, and had which in the whole of my family. Now this is the important part here. Then did Ning Ig Azag. Now I don't know who that is. Obviously it's someone. So then did this person, Anunnaki, fashion two small creatures. So he made two small creatures, just like Enki does. Among the beasts he made, their form was glorious, basically. So again, not an almighty being, an Anunnaki. And then it says ... the goddess Gula. Now she was an Anunnaki, almost as famous as Ishtar, or as we know her, Inanna. And she was actually a medical person, so she probably helped with the genetic modification of these two small creatures. ... one black and one black. Sorry, one white and one black. I'm trying to read over the phone here. And one white and one black. So basically the colours of the creatures, whatever particular creature it was, it could have been a zebra, maybe, or a different type of creature. But interestingly, they definitely made one. He fashioned it, and it wasn't an almighty being. So let me know if you like these videos that I keep doing. I find it fascinating because we're getting an insight into actually what they were thinking, what they did, and why they did it, etc. Let me know. Have I got a treat for you guys? This is a reading by me, don't worry, it's not a boring reading, of the Anunnaki text, how the Anunnaki brought barley to Earth. Now, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Now, this is a translation that's done by the Oxford University. Many different people had gone through it. There's loads down the bottom here, if you can see. There's loads more below that. And what I do is I read out these using my knowledge and help people understand who and what things are as I read it out. So if you're interested in more of these, I do have them on my Patreon page where, for example, they're talking about the Great Flood and so on. The Patreon page is called Our True History, so patreon.com, Our True History. So let's start reading this now, so you get an idea of how the Anunnaki lived. So where I say ... that normally means there's bits missing. In other words, they can't transcribe the texts. And these are the oldest texts known to man. Okay, men used to eat grass with their mouths like sheep. Now, men were the ones that the Anunnaki created. So we can see straight away that Neanderthal, that preceded humans or Homo sapiens, because obviously the Anunnaki genetically bred Neanderthal with their own DNA to create modern, well, humans. So if humans were eating grass with their mouths, then so would have the Neanderthals. In those times, they did not know grain, barley, or flax. An, which would be Anu, brought these down from the interior of heaven. Now, interestingly, heaven clearly means space, because there's many times they're talking about the stars in heaven. But I think it's a double meaning, because when I read it sometimes it basically means Nibiru. So in this case it would be Nibiru. Now, if you know how the Sumerian texts work, one word could actually mean 6 different things. So that's why I believe there is a possibility that heaven is, depending on their reference, it's just the same as us with the word live and live. 2 different things, and we have the same things here. But so heaven in this instant would be Nibiru. I'll read that again. And King Anu brought these down from the interior of heaven. Enlil, which is Anu's son, lifted his gaze around as a stag lifts its horns when climbing the terraced ... hills. He looked southwards and saw the wide sea. He looked northwards and saw the mountain of aromatic cedars. Enlil piled up the barley, gave it to the mountain. He piled up the bounty of the land, gave the Inuha barley to the mountain. He closed off access to the wide open hill. In other words, he's locked it somehow. He ... its lock. I'm guessing secured. He secured its lock, which heaven and earth shut fast. And they put a question mark. They weren't sure if that was a correct translation. Its bolt, which ... So again, probably a bolt to lock it. And another tablet. The Nanzu, who actually is another name for Ninurta, who is Enlil's son. The Nanzu said to his brother Nimnada, let us go to the mountain where the barley and flux grows, ... the rolling river, where the water wells up from the earth. Let us introduce the Inhala barley into Sumer. Now that's where they were at that point. So if you remember your history, Sumer is the first place that they got taught out of the 4 different territories, and that's why we have the ancient Sumerian text as the oldest, because that's where humans were started to be taught. Let us make barley known in Sumer, which knows no barley. Nimada, the worshipper of An, replied to him, since our father has not given command, in other words Enlil, since Enlil has not given command, how can we go to the mountain? Everything was very strict back then, as you can imagine. How can we bring the barley from its mountain? How can we introduce the Inhal grain into Sumer? How can we make barley known in Sumer, which knows no barley? Now they do repeat a lot of things, which really bad in terms of them having to scribe this into clay. So to repeat things over and over, it seems illogical for me, but they obviously felt it was important to do that. Then another tablet wrote, come, let us go to Utu of heaven. Now Utu was in charge of, so he was the twin brother of Inanna, and he was in charge of the space port, in other words, backwards and forwards up into space. So that makes sense. There's a second heaven there, but space, this one, not Nibiru. Who, as he lies there, sleeps a sound sleep. To the hero, the son of Nigel, who, as he lies there, sleeps a sound sleep. I told you they repeat things. He raised his hands towards Utu of the 70 doors, ? And then the very last tablet was Utu ... table ... So that's this particular very short one, but it's really important because along with goats, etc., the Anunnaki brought down from their home planet many things. So we ended up getting wine and bread basically taught to us by the Sumerians, and literally here it is written in stone tablets. So next time someone says to you there's no such thing as Anunnaki, literally they're telling us that man, right at the top there, man used to eat grass with his mouth. If this was written by man, you wouldn't say man used to eat because you're one of them. You would only say man if you're not one of them. In other words, something different, in this case an Anunnaki, and clearly you can see all the names and everything that's written in the stone tablets that predate the Bible, so just keep that in mind. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I have done many others already on my Patreon page, as well as many different types of videos, even one long series called Everything You Need to Know About Spirits. So if you're interested in any of that, you can actually go there. Some of the videos are free to watch on Patreon, so you can just go there and look for Outer History. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this, and look out for more. Thanks. There is no such thing as ancient aliens, according to Michael Heiser, who is a Christian author and wants to sell you books about the Bible, but doesn't want to tell you about the tablets that predate the Bible, not just in Sumerian, but Akkadian, Assyrian, and a few other different languages that come prior to the Bible. But of course, the copies of the Bible copies these older texts, but of course he doesn't want to sell you those because he probably hasn't researched those. But he also tries to debunk Sakurai Sitchin, and poorly does it, because it's not just Sakurai Sitchin that actually translates these. Look at this. Robert William Rogers, back in 1912, translated tablets, and he's called it, his title was Cuneiform Parallels to the Old Testament. So again, nothing to do with Sitchin, and parallels to the Old Testament. In other words, one of them's older, and we know the older tablets are older than the Bible. So I don't know why this guy... Anyway. Right, so I'm just going to read some passages out to you, because I think this is really important. You should know about Adam and Eve. So we all know Adam and Eve. His real name is Adapa, and the Eve's name was Titi. Now, here's a passage here from King Anu on the home planet, Nibiru. So he's an Anunnaki, or Elohim as their race name was called. So here it's talking about Adapa. So his messenger, so that is King Anu's messenger. Now, if you read this version in the Bible, it would be an angel, because angels were messengers. So it's clearly, come on, you know. Ibarat answered him, "My lord, Adapa, the son of Ea." So Ea is also the original name for Enki before he came here, and was given the name Enki because he was in charge of South Africa. So Kai being earth, Enkai. So that's why he got that name. Here's another bit here. When thou comest up to heaven and approachest the door of Anu. So according to biblical people, you can't go to heaven unless you die. And here we've got Enoch, we've got Ezekiel, and we've now got Adapa all going up to heaven to actually knock on the door of Anu, which isn't an almighty being. So one more one, just because it's fun. So basically, Adapa met King Anu on Nibiru, and King Anu basically at this point said, right, okay, take him and bring him back to his earth. These are tablets written thousands and thousands of years before the Bible. Take him back to his earth? Really? Which one's right? Bible or these older texts? The full version of this is on my Patreon page, if anyone's interested. Hi guys, thought I'd show you this website called Giza.mused.org, and it allows you to have virtual tours around different places. So these are tombs and the Great Pyramid, for example, and I thought I'd show you the difference between a tomb and a pyramid up close and personal. So here we're going to have a look at the tomb of Khufu the First, I think it is. So it's not Khufu's, not the main pyramid. This is an actual tomb for someone different. And as you can see with the pictures on the walls, they show on tombs they have pictures all over the place. And we'll go to a different tomb now, and this one's Tutankhamun's tomb. And from what I understand, there's supposedly a gap behind this wall somewhere. More recently they found, and it leads off to another room, but hopefully mainstream will tell us that. But as again, you can see the images on this tomb, and then another tomb here. Now there's a carving there of someone, I'm not sure who that person is, but you're probably going to be saying, well, hang on a minute, there's no images on these walls, so therefore I'm wrong, but this is sort of the outside of the tomb. So when you get inside here, so you should try this yourselves, guys, it's really good fun. But as you can see, when you zoom in, there is all these hieroglyphic images again. So let's have a look now inside the Great Pyramid, inside the tomb. So here you can actually again walk all the way around. So I'm just going back up. Excuse the laundry basket, I haven't had time to tidy up in the pyramid. But here's the entrance here to go into the Grand Gallery, or the King's Chamber, or whatever you want to call it. And here it is. So this is the granite block that supposedly had a body in it, but no one ever found a body. So why they just suppose, I don't know. But again, the point is there's nothing on the walls, and this is because it's it was designed for something else. And there's one of the shafts. Now supposedly these go off to either Orion, if you roll back the clock far enough, or they're air shafts, or both. But they don't actually go out to the outside. So why? It really frustrates me. Why do people still call them air shafts when they actually turn and go up towards the top of the pyramid, as opposed to going out into the fresh air? There's no gap on the end of this. This is it. It goes up and then it turns and goes straight to the top. So, but this is really good fun to have a look around. Ignore the security camera up there. I just do that because I'm a voyeur. I'm joking, it's not mine. But the point is, it's really good fun, and ignore the person there that's trying to run away. Good fun, go and do it yourself. And that's called giza.mused.org, and then look for the tours. Enjoy it. Aliens and the Freemasons. Now, if you're one of these people that believes Zecharia Sitchin was a Freemason, which he could have been, but also gave out deliberate false information about the Anunnaki in his books, then that's a bit of a numpty thing to think. And the reason why I say that is because this gentleman here, Nathaniel Smith, back in 1895 translated the tablets and actually came up with the same conclusion as Zecharia Sitchin. In other words, the Anunnaki are from another planet. And he was actually tried for heresy. So when people say Zecharia Sitchin's full of crap, then this person's full of crap prior to Sitchin, and he wasn't a Freemason. And then also the Oxford University that also translates the tablets and come out with the same conclusions as Zecharia Sitchin and this other guy and other people that's translated the tablets. Please, whoever keeps waffling on about Zecharia Sitchin being a Freemason, forget it. Doesn't matter. End of. I'm going to do a couple of videos on different religions, on what they believe happens after we die, and then I'll break down why they're completely wrong and you know, even silly to the point that no one's actually thought of these things. Obviously I have, but okay, so this one's the Church of Jesus Christ. Now this is what they say: when we die, our spirit and body separate. So everything that I've learned from clairvoyance, mediums, spiritualists, regression people, the spirit is not ours, it's a light energy being, it's an orb. But they do separate from us. Even though our body dies, our spirit, technically it separates, which is the essence of who we are. So in other words, it's like a hard drive, as I've said many a time before. The light energy being is a hard drive, basically, and stores everything that we did. That lives on, which is correct. Our spirit, not ours, a spirit goes to the spirit world. The spirit world is a waiting period where we receive the gift of resurrection. Slightly true, yeah. When our spirits reunite with our bodies, our future resurrected body cannot die, and it will be perfect. Now, this is where it goes stupid, because there's X amount of billions of people here on Earth right now, which means either a brand new spirit has joined with or been born, if you go believe this, been born with every single person. That means no one's been resurrected yet, because otherwise I have been resurrected, in which case I feel pain. Do you get what I'm saying here? It's free from pain. No, I feel pain. So are you telling me that every single person that's living right now is a brand new spirit, has a brand new spirit, in which case that spirit hasn't been resurrected yet? Which makes no sense, because obviously they're talking about it's going to be resurrected, and we know from studies and clairvoyance, etc., that resurrection has already happened. So that just doesn't make sense. And also here it says it's because of the infinite love of Jesus Christ that everyone will be resurrected. Again, not correct, because there's ancient texts that predate Jesus Christ, talking about resurrections, talking about reincarnations. So when you've got older texts before Jesus Christ came along, how can Jesus Christ be the one that
helps, basically gets the people resurrected, if it, she, they, them wasn't around prior. So it just, again, doesn't make sense. So excuse me. So I'm going to do other religions after this video as well. Hope you like this one. Let's have a laugh. I mean, look at what the Catholic Church says about afterlife. And I say laugh because it's, let's take the rose-tinted glasses off and actually see it for what it is, the logic. I can't do anything other than use logic. The Church affirms that one day each of us will be called upon to account for our life, while Christ, our judge. Now, Christ came along 2,000 years ago. What happened to the people 300,000 years ago? They didn't have souls? You can't just pick and choose when you want to give them souls because you use the word Christ. It doesn't work like that. And here's another bit here. Individual judgment, sometimes called particular judgment, happens at the moment of death, when each individual will be judged on how they have lived their life. The soul will go to heaven, hell, or purgatory, depending on whether their actions have been judged as being in accordance with God's teachings or not. How stupid. How stupid is that? Because God's teachings, the closest we've got is some books, Bible. That's it. You tell me anywhere else that we've got any teachings of God. There is none. So if those people that wrote the Bible, which is a copy of the older text, which is about the Anunnaki, but let's just pretend it's about an almighty being that wants you to learn that. So down the line, what happens if these books got burned by Romans or whatever, and I never got to see them now here in 2022? Then what? So am I going to be judged badly because I didn't read these books, because some dictatorship, 1,000 years ago decided to burn every single copy of them? How stupid. No, I'm sorry, but that is just stupid, isn't it? So I'm going to I'm going to go to hell because I didn't know about books. He hasn't come down and gave us proper teachings. And also the Bibles contradict themselves so much that even people that do believe it will get confused and probably end up in hell. Of course, though, if you believe the original text, which there are original texts, British Museum, etc., that actually talk about the Anunnaki as the Bible talks about, but actually doesn't have any of the inconsistencies, the original text. And if you're unsure what I'm on about, please go back and watch my videos from number 1 onwards, or just look up Sumerian texts and you'll see that they talk about the flood, they talk about Noah. This predates the Bible. So one of them's right, the older ones or the Bible. I'll always go with the older ones. So it's just sad that I'm, I don't know, maybe it's just me. What do you think makes more sense? A light energy being, orb, that connects with our pineal gland when we're 3 to 4 months in the mother's womb and learns everything that we learn, and then when we die, it's like a hard drive, we're connected to it, we can control the orb, but eventually at some point or another it moves on to the next plane of existence, moves on up, and it goes back round again and then reincarnates in someone else. In other words, we don't have our own soul, we're connected to this orb. Or, as Buddhists would say, we have our own soul. Now, if we have our own soul, how does this work? So when the first people were born, they get their very first own soul. Then their children would have, the adults would have still been alive. So the children would have had to have a new soul with them. And how many millions and billions of people, have I still got a new soul? In which case, reincarnation hasn't happened for me yet. Or, at what point, how many souls are there? If every person's being born with a brand new soul, at what point does anyone reincarnate? It just doesn't make sense. So there would have had to have been a cut-off for people to have then started to reincarnate, because we know reincarnation is true, because the Virginia University's done studies and actually proved it. Clairvoyants, mediums, spiritualists, etc., and the people that's obviously had reincarnations and hypnotism. The list goes on. So reincarnation is real. So which ones do you think is real? We have our own soul. Now, if that's the case, then I would probably have 10,000 other spirits inside of me from previous generations. Or have I only got my very first own soul now? In which case, doesn't seem to be any reincarnation, because my children would have had their brand new spirit with their own soul. It just doesn't make sense. So, what's your thoughts? Light energy being that's nothing really to do with us other than it just learns, as it says in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, or we're all got our own brand new soul every time we're born, in which case there's no reincarnation because we've got our own brand new soul. It just doesn't make sense. What do you think? Following on from my previous videos about what happens when you die in different religions, this one's now Islam, and here it basically says that their soul is taken by the angel of death, and the soul enters a state of waiting until the day of judgment, and then 2 angels question that soul. Now, after 40 years of research with clairvoyants, mediums, spiritualists, etc., and past life regressions, etc., yes, there is a spirit that joins with us when we're 3 to 4 months in the womb. Yes, it leaves us when we die. And yes, it does a soul review, basically, and it reviews your own life. And then once you've... Technically, it's learning. That's all it ever does. And it's not your soul. It's an entity that joined with you. And so everything that I've learned basically says there's no 2 angels that question your soul. It's your own reflection, or the spirit's own reflection of what happened in that past life, in that life that you just had. So, you know, they're all fairly similar with their narratives. Do you believe we have free will? In other words, we can create our own destiny? I don't think so anymore, and I'll tell you why. After 40 odd years of research, listening to clairvoyants, mediums, spiritualists, remote viewers, and my own personal experience, we're using Ouija boards, asking future questions, we get back an answer. Now, that answer is then caveated normally with, oh, well, that's one of an infinite possibilities that might happen in the future. Now, these are normally given to us by spirits. So it's like me saying that one day you're going to be a superhero or you're going to be hit by a bus. You can't just choose one thing out of infinite because it just doesn't make sense. In other words, that one infinite thing that they've just pointed out is probably going to be the true answer, which means there is no free will because it's already been destined. You can't just say, oh, that's one of many possibilities, because why even say it? Why even give us one answer? Just following on from my last video about why I don't think we really have free will. I think at one point there was a me and a you that went round once, and so the whole universe went round and came to a conclusion, and now it's repeating itself. In other words, it's just continuously repeating, or there is no beginning and end, in which case, as spirits can do, they can move forward and backwards in time. Now, if that's the case, then we've already done all this once before, and now we're just on a loop. So I'm now sitting here doing this video when I probably did it the very first time, which is kind of weird, because obviously if the very first time there was no before that, in which case how could I be talking about? So I think there's a limit to the extent of what we can change in our future. In other words, our future's preset because of what I said in the last video, but I think individually we can change minor things. I hope this video will prove that the Anunnaki aliens exist and that the governments were fully aware of it, certainly in 1977 when they launched the Voyager probe. Now, the probe went up into space and had a record on it that would show different languages, including Sumerian. Now, Sumerian is a dead language. It hasn't been used since at least the 1st century AD. So if someone can tell me why the government would have put a Sumerian word or language on there when we don't even use it anymore. The only reason why they would do that is because the Anunnaki might have intercepted the Voyager craft and read it and understood it. And they've even got an audio clip of what the words sound like. So someone tell me why they would have put Sumerian on there if it wasn't for the Anunnaki. Hear me out and then tell me your thoughts after. So the Voyager spacecrafts in the late 70s were designed to collect information from Jupiter and Saturn. So we know between us and Jupiter and Saturn there's no aliens, is there? So why put images, music, sounds and greetings on a gold disc if there's no aliens? Clearly this was designed to talk to aliens down the line. Now, in my opinion, it was targeted to go to the planet Nibiru or past Nibiru, where the Anunnaki, which was their race name was Elohim, was to intercept it and read the greetings. Now, there's 55 different languages on there. One of them is the Sumerian language, which is the Elohim's language, which is the Anunnaki's language, which is an alien language. Now, there's no derivatives of Sumerian, so that it's a dead language. There's no reason whatsoever to have put that on there. So clearly, it wasn't designed for Jupiter and Saturn. For those of you that are interested in our true history, I have done a translation reading from the Hoaxes. It's on my Patreon page. It's, I think, about an hour long. And I read through the translation and I explain where different things are and who are what and what not. Whereas, obviously, if you just read it and you may not know half the things that I know, you might think, who's this person and who's that person? So I actually break it all down for you. And this is the translation where the Anunnaki created humans. So something definitely to watch. That's on my Patreon page, which has got loads of other videos as well as live chats, etc. So do feel free to go there. It's Patreon and it's called Our True History. I can't praise this video on YouTube enough. Now, it's done by a company called Viper TV, and it's called Anunnaki Giant Slab Discovered Revealing Noah, Gilgamesh, etc. So have a look for it. Please watch it. This is the only people I've seen that's actually got the same information as me. So which means they've come to the same conclusions as me, which is absolutely fantastic for me. Now, I know it was released in April 22. And obviously, I've been doing my lives a lot longer than that, so I'm hoping they haven't copied me. But either way, they obviously agree with what I've said. The only thing they have got, I think, wrong is where they say Jesus' father was Enki. I don't think that's the case. Enki was already very old, 10,000 years ago. They do, in the video, it does jump time zones a bit. You know, they're talking about one thing, then they don't tell you that they're now talking about something that's happened 10,000 years later, but still excellent. Do you know someone that believes the world is flat or even round? Well, now you can buy these novelty books which actually has questions in it that they can't answer. The books are designed for you to buy for someone else, and they will have to try and answer the question. So basically, they're going to struggle if they believe the world is flat, because there's questions in here that they won't be able to answer. But the same goes for the world is round. So there's 2 books that you can buy on Amazon, and you can watch their face when they're trying to explain the answers to some of these questions. Give the gift that keeps on giving when you watch their face as they try and answer some of these questions. So all you have to do is type in "the world's gone flat" or "the world's gone round" on Amazon or all good bookstores. I'm just going to talk about Stargate and Saddam Hussein. Now, I've had a few people say, oh, did Saddam Hussein find a Stargate in Iraq, which was the Anunnakis? And this channel here called Viper TV, they're really, really good. They've almost got everything spot on to what I agree with, but this the logic here, it doesn't work for me when it comes to the Anunnaki having a Stargate. I'm just going to play a little bit and then I'll explain why the Anunnaki didn't really have a Stargate.
Henry's central thesis is that a Stargate used the Anunnaki Nephilim to travel between Earth and Nibiru in Sumerian times.
Between Earth and Nibiru. Now, we've got records in writing that they had an away station on Lamu, I think it's called, which was Mars. So they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't need an away station if they could just take the gold right through a Stargate to their home planet. So that kind of rules that out. Then you could say, well, maybe it was after they'd done that, then they created the thing. However, this video here carries on talking about that it was from the ancient original times of Sumeria that they had the Stargate, which again means that they wouldn't have needed the spacecraft to travel backwards and forwards. And then also this video here carries on talking about Gilgamesh being around at the same time as these Stargates. Now that doesn't make sense, because if anyone's read the Epic of Gilgamesh, you know that the story goes that he's trying to get to the spaceport to meet Utu, because he wants to go back or go to Nibiru for the first time so he could get longevity of life. He originally tried to get, well, he didn't even know about the elixir until he was on his travels. So basically, if there was a Stargate, then he wouldn't have needed to go to meet Utu, who was in charge of the spaceport, to send him up to Nibiru. So in other words, they wouldn't have needed a spaceport because she would have just gone through the Stargate. So so when it comes to Stargate in Iraq, was the military going in there pretending that there's weapons of mass destruction to look up artifacts from Sumerian times or Anunnaki times? Yes, totally believe that. Was it a Stargate? Probably not. Probably some other devices or technological things that the Anunnaki may have left behind or got buried when the tsunami happened. And when I say tsunami, Great Flood, but watch my videos, you'll see it was a tsunami. So I don't think it was a Stargate from the Anunnaki. If anyone built Stargates around the world, it probably wouldn't have been the Anunnaki, because they wouldn't have needed the ships to go backwards and forwards with the gold, etc. So that's my take on it. Have you heard about the possible dragon skeleton found in China? Well, just have a look in the background. There's houses. Now, this hasn't been excavated, which means it's in situ. So you're telling me that this is the first time someone's seen it, and if this was excavated, then you can guarantee that they wouldn't be allowing people anywhere near a relic like this. So basically, this is probably some film prop that got left behind. Now, if you're interested in knowing what an actual dragon was, we do know. The actual original translations of the Sumerian was that a comet was a dragon and a demon was a meteorite that came into Earth's atmosphere. And his translations, not by Sitchin, but by someone over 100 odd years ago, and it literally talks about the dragon being 350 miles long with a long tail, which was a comet. Is there a planet called Nibiru that travels 3,600 years around our own solar system? I say there is, and that's because basically I do my homework. And here is a translation of ancient texts from 1912, and the book of the translation is called Cuneiform Parallels to the Old Testament. And in that it talks about demons, which if you do your homework, you'll realise demons are meteorites that enter Earth's atmosphere, and they seem to be travelling around with Nibiru, with the planet Nibiru, as it does its Shah. Again, do your homework and you'll realise that the 3,600 years is one Shah, which is 1 year for them. That's why I know the planet's got to be real, because no one would make that kind of stuff up thousands of years ago and imprint it into tablets. So basically, as Nibiru comes round, we are going to be bombarded with meteorites. Is an octopus an alien? Well, Ancient Aliens TV show suggests possibly it is. I thought I'd give you my version of why some of their logic doesn't sit right. Some people don't seem to use logic. So here's their version.
That octopuses possess extraterrestrial DNA.
Okay, so the first logic is, in order for you to know that it's extraterrestrial DNA, you would need to have extraterrestrial DNA guaranteed from another planet, or at least from space, that's not originating here on Earth. They haven't got that. All they've got is...
What we find in the octopus genome is just almost uncanny. It has something like 50,000 genes. Compare that with the human, which has something like 25,000 genes.
So basically, because it's got more genes, they're saying it's extraterrestrial. So in other words, I was right, they didn't have any evidence whatsoever of it being from another star system or another planet or anything at all. Now, how did it get 50,000? Well, they actually even give you the answer here, so it's a bit silly that they didn't think this, but this is their next part.
It can edit its own genetic code.
DNA, the double helix, is like a zipper. The zipper can be unzipped. And then another molecule is created called RNA.
So basically it's creating its own, which would explain over millions of years why it has more genes than us. But they also go on to say...
Is it possible that this extraordinary creature, with 3 hearts and 9 brains, is not from Earth? Perhaps evidence can be found by examining mythological accounts.
So what they then say about the mythological accounts is this.
All the way around the world, there are traditions to do with a creator god in the form of an octopus.
So this is all they've got so far. Now, if you actually look at creator gods in the forms of animals, look at how many there are. Look, this is ridiculous. So to simply just say it's an alien because the few reasons that they've given is illogical. Now, if you go back to the actual Sumerian texts, they actually say they do bring down some animals from their home planet, Nibiru, such as sheep. So, having an octopus from their own planet, possible. In my previous video, I said that the guests on Ancient Aliens TV show had it wrong the way they said it about octopuses being from another planet. If you watch my video, you'll see that their logic just didn't sit right. However, I'm saying that there's a possibility that the octopuses did come from another planet. So just look at their eyes for a moment, and these eyes here, these were goats. Now the Anunnaki in text actually admit they brought down various different types of animals, including goats. And we've got the text around, but there's also some other animals here that also have the same slit eyes. Now, the goat was first appeared 10,000 years ago. The actual text from the Anunnaki say they brought them down 10,000 years ago. So far we've got a match for the goats. Now, where would the goats have been? It would have been in Mesopotamia, which is Iraq, Iran area. And lo and behold, this is where they first found the first goat, Iran. I have had people say before that back then everyone was bigger. The problem we've got with that is the skeletons that everyone seems to find are down here, 6 foot or less. And the reason why they find only a handful of these giant skeletons is because it's the other way around. In other words, the majority of people were less than sort of 5 foot tall, and a handful of them, which were the Nephilim, watch my other videos if you don't know what I'm talking about, were giants. So when you say everyone was much bigger then, that means all archaeologists around the world, and even individual people that are not archaeologists that stumble across skeletons of people way back, they don't find the giant skeletons. Which you're saying there should be every single skeleton, because you just said that everyone was bigger back then. So every skeleton should. Let me tell you why alien gods were immortal. And we're talking, the Bible talks about alien gods, and we know that because we have actually got the original Sumerian cuneiform tablets that predate the Bible, that the Bible's copied from. So we know the Bible is talking about Anunnaki, or Elohim as the race name was called. So how and why were they immortal? Their home planet had an elliptical orbit around our solar system, 3,600 years. So when they came here, one of our years would have been about a month of their life. And they actually slept for 7 days and 7 nights. We know that because it says so in the Atrahasis. And that means they worked for 7 days and 7 nights. But it made it look like they were immortal because obviously they did have a longer lifespan. So when the Anunnaki first came here, and before they created humans in their image, they were only mining for 6 months of their life, not for thousands of years. Just a quick point about Nibiru, the planet that is in our solar system that comes around every 3,600 years, that has the Anunnaki, or Elohim as their real race name is called, on the planet. Now, I know there's people out there that say, well, you know, is there such a thing as Nibiru? Okay, so this is the Oxford University's translations of cuneiform tablets. Now, I thought I'd mention that they actually had a shrine of Nibiru in the Abzu, which is South Africa. So a shrine is a place for a deity or an object, or in this case a planet. So there you go. There is such a thing called Nibiru. I'm going to tell you something that I've worked out about Adam and Eve, and you won't hear it from anyone else because no one else has worked it out at this point. So, Enki, which was the god or lord, told Adam, or Adapa as he was actually called, that when he goes to the planet Nibiru, because he was being sent to Enki's homeworld, do not eat the food. Now, Enki had told Adapa this in the location of Eden, which is actually how it's pronounced, not Eden. So the food on Nibiru, Adapa couldn't eat because it would kill him. So the Lord warned him, do not eat it. And now, have we got any proof of that? Well, actually, of course we have, because that's what I deal with, facts. So here is a transcript of the Sumerian text that predates the Bible by thousands of years. And Adapa, if you read them all, you'll find he is the Adam out of Adam and Eve. And it says here, do not eat and do not drink, when he gets to Antarctica. If you believe there is more land past Antarctica, watch my pinned videos, and I've also got some fresh air I can sell you. However, military have been in Antarctica for a very long time, since the late 40s, and only recently are we being told that discoveries of various different creatures, fish, etc., have been found deep within the ice, living as a whole ecosystem. Now, if you know anything about the military, they will do whatever they can in order to win a war. And if that means keeping Antarctica secret because there's certain types of creatures that would be beneficial to medical, pharmaceutical, even poisons and chemical warfare, etc. So here we're finally only being let known to us that there is a few things going on down there, but obviously there's a hell of a lot more that we'll never know. Breaking news, I've got another exclusive for you here, and the next video will be me talking about what the actual 10 plagues of Egypt was. And no, it's not what we're told here. I actually go by the original tablets, and I'm the only person that's worked it out. Now, you may think that's egotistical, but I am the only person that actually does my own videos and do not upload others with this kind of content. I'm also the person that worked out why Adam, and again based off of the actual text, so I've done videos covering that, why Adam wasn't allowed to eat. I'm also going to be doing a video on Mars and when it died, so that is something you really want to listen to, who was on there, etc. Stonehenge, I'm the person that worked out that that's connected to the Book of Enoch, which was a calendar. Again, only person that's connected the dots 100%. Who was on Atlantis and where, etc. Watch my previous videos for that. So keep watching.
Yeah, I've got a problem with this. So I'm just only saying this because I'd like to help you understand that the Bible isn't the be-all and end-all. There is actually older text than that. So where you're saying life started by humans, humans only appeared here on Earth 300,000 years ago. Now, obviously, if you said hominids, then that's different. Of course, then that changes your whole perspective on the Bible. And obviously we've got things like troglodytes and stuff like that, which we've got fossils for, and they are older than 300,000 years ago. So the problem you really have is the fact that you may not be aware of Sumerian tablets. Now, there's even a book out there called the Cuneiform Parallels to the Old Testament, and Parallels basically saying, hey, these older texts are saying the same thing that the Bible says, but the older texts don't have any issues. They're not got inconsistencies. So follow and I'll teach you.
This person's replying to my previous comment where I asked them, do they know about the Sumerian tablets that predate the Bible, that is where the Bible copies from? And they wrote, if it's not the Bible, which is wholly put together by God Almighty. Now, the problem we've got with that is the older texts actually say the same thing. So was it God Almighty that did the older text? And if it was God Almighty that did the older text, then the older texts actually talk about Enlil and Enki. So, for example, Enki tells Noah, or Sesudra, about the Great Flood. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say it was God Almighty that created it, and yet older texts that predate the Bible must have been done by someone else. But if you say, no, it was God then that did the older text, and the Bible is a copy of the older texts, then the older texts talk about Enlil and Enki, which are from a planet called Nibiru. So you can't have it both ways.
I found this year's prize numpty, and the thing is, this numpty thinks that I'm full of crap. So let's forget Ivan Finkel, who can translate cuneiform tablets. He's the curator of the British Museum. So it's not just Zachariah Sitchin, you numpty. Let's forget the Oxford University, with many scholars that have translated it, and their actual translations are up on their website. But let's forget that. Let's forget the 1912 gentleman that wrote the Cuneiform Parallels of the Old Testament. Again, not Zachariah Sitchin. So now, straight away, and then UCLA, then the Louvre, and many, many people that have translated it, where they hold the actual tablets themselves. So, congratulations for trying to pretend that I'm the numpty when really you're the numpty. So, well done.
You have never heard this before because I've worked it out. So the 10 plagues of Egypt actually didn't start in Egypt. It was actually started in Israel. And the aftermath of those events in Israel ended up in Egypt, which I'll explain in a sec. And the Egyptians wrote it down. That's the 10 plagues. And it didn't happen over 10 days. It happened over thousands of years, which I'll get to. Now, the plagues, if you look, there's things like plagues of amphibious creatures, gnats, etc., and flies. Now, what happened is, over in Israel, where we've got the original texts, so forget the Bible, this is it. Basically, Enlil, which was an Anunnaki alien god, if you want to call him a god, he wasn't, who was in charge of Earth at that point. Enki was his brother, who was in charge of the sea, but that's another story. Watch my videos. So Enlil, who was the supreme leader, was getting really fed up with people because we was too noisy, and he wanted to wipe us out. And this actually matches the same time frame as the 10 plagues of Egypt. So here, the first one is he gives the order to let a disease upon the people. So again, an almighty being or someone with technology. Yeah, you guessed it. So then later on, what they done was they blocked off water, which is why all the insects and frogs, etc., went to the Nile. It literally says here they block off the water, etc. So that's why Egypt ended up having the aftermath, which makes sense. And again, here is another one where they're talking about locking the air above. I'm not quite 100% sure what that is, to be fair with you, but and then you've got another one where it shows what happens to the land where it's getting bleached with alkali, etc., which is why the waters ended up red. Watch my previous videos about the colour red. It wasn't blood. And there's another one here a bit later on. So these over thousands of years now. They allow the different type of poison to happen now. Slightly same name, but different part there. And again, this is where you see the 10 plagues where death of the firstborn. It wasn't actually. It was they would eat, because they were starving, they would eat their first son or baby, basically the babies, and that was why it was what it was there. So they would eat them because they were starving. So it all makes sense. There's plenty more. In fact, if you want me to go through it all, which I have done on my Patreon page, look for Ultra Hastiest Translation, The Real Plagues of Egypt. You'll get my full version there. I'm going to tell you why I think Bigfoot is real. So first, you've got the Patterson-Gimlin footage, which hasn't been debunked. You've now got 2 people on their deathbed saying that they built the suit. So one of them, independently, so one of them's lying or both of them's lying. So they're both lying, obviously. And then you've got the police that actually admit seeing Bigfoots. And then you also have all these normal people. So in 2019 in Washington, 2,000 reports over, and in Pennsylvania 1,600, and then in Michigan, etc. So all of these people were mistaken a Bigfoot for, well, a bear for a Bigfoot, really, because it can't be anything else other than a bear that size. And then you've got reports of people like a policeman saying he's actually got the body of a Bigfoot. Now, you'll never get to see that body, and I'll explain why, because it's an alien body. So Bigfoot is an alien race. The ones here are trapped here because they're descendants of a prison ship that crashed 10,000 years ago, at least 10,000 years ago, and the other Bigfoots that fly around. So once we realise that these are an alien race, that's game over for the government. So that's why this police officer will never show the body, because it will get taken from him. And then you've got the genetics with the DNA. Now this makes me laugh, because you've got things like here where people have sent in, proper Bigfoot hunters have sent in hair which they believe might be from a Bigfoot, and then these institutions come back and say it's a cow. But what they don't realise is that the cow must have been 6 to 7 foot tall or climbing a tree, because that's where the hair was found. So you can rule this out, because when you work out who funds these, and I'll get to that in a second, you can't trust the DNA. And also, when they come out with the hair has a percentage of human DNA in it, so does a fruit fly. In fact, you can't even trust the DNA statistics as it is. Look, what animal shares 98% of our DNA? Chimps. And then scroll down here and it says chimpanzees have 70%. That's quite a difference between 98. So straight away, someone can't do their calculations correctly. And then if you're going to say, okay, well, maybe there is, but then a banana has 60%. So when a Bigfoot has human DNA, doesn't mean it's human DNA. It's a generic DNA that everything, including bananas and fruit flies, has. Now, when you look at the labs, you'll see that they're all funded by, or the people have worked for universities that are funded by the Rockefellers. And the Rockefellers, if you know anything about them, they don't want us to know about our true history, including aliens, etc. So these are all Rockefeller institutions with the DNA. So that's why you can't trust the DNA. Lemuria, the place that supposedly sank that had advanced humans on it. Let's be honest, it's crap. The whole thing is made up by a zoologist back in 1864 where he theorised, that was it. And then since then people have been talking about Lemuria, but it was him that came up with the idea in the first place. And I mean, some of the stories that they've got of a four-armed hermaphroditic race, we've got zero evidence of a four-armed race. So there's just basically no evidence whatsoever. And of course, then people made up the stories that the Lemurians had a fight with the Atlanteans. But of course, if you watch my previous videos, you know I am 100% right on who was on Atlantis. You can't argue with me, no one has. And that's because I go by the written records and not Plato, because he just made a lot of crap up. So I go by what evidence there is. So in terms of Lemurians and Atlanteans, zero evidence whatsoever other than the Anunnaki. And that's not to say there isn't buildings under the water. There is all around the world, but not Lemurians. Lost continent of Mu, load of crap. Sorry, this is a new version of me getting rid of all the baloney that's out there. So basically 1825 is roughly when someone come up with the idea that there was a continent. Now that's not to say there wasn't continents. In fact, possibly the whole of the planet was one big continent that split up, and that's fine. But Mu supposedly broke up a continent 12,000 years ago. Of course, we've got zero evidence of that whatsoever. And also, it had 64 million people. So who sat there and counted those people with major cities? No one. Zero evidence whatsoever of any people on a continent that broke up 12,000 years ago. Now, the actual oldest writing, if you go by mainstream, is only 3,400 BC. I say about 9,000, but still, that's another 3,000 years that someone would have had to have held on to that information and gave it to the people that ended up writing. But of course, we've got zero evidence of that. That's not to say there wasn't continents, but certainly not 12,000 years ago that one sunk. So ignore it. Here's a little test for you, a logic test, see how well you do. So would you, if you was purple-headed and you created a species that looks like you, that's also purple, would you call them the purple-headed? You probably wouldn't. You'd give them a different name, wouldn't you, logically? So anyway, the reason why I say that is because the Anunnaki, who are actually described in the ancient texts as pale skin, blue eyes and white beard, which is where we get the generic god from. But there's some people out there that say that they're dark skinned. No matter how many times I ask for the proof of that, they don't actually come back with it. Now let's have a look at what the actual translations of the people that the Anunnaki created. They call them the black-headed people. And the reason for that is because the Anunnaki were Pau. So you don't call yourself Pau and then call the creatures that you created Pau-headed, because it's just illogical. Do you not agree?
This person's replying to a video that I done where I was talking about the Anunnaki, Elohim creating humans, which we've got the tablets. We've actually physically got the tablets. We've got different people translating it, all saying the same thing, that in the Abzu, Enki created humans from a hominid. They tried about 7 or 8 times. They finally got it right, etc. So we've got the actual evidence that predate the Bible by thousands of years. And obviously anyone with half a brain knows, if they've done any research, that the Hebrew is a translation of Aramaic, which is off of Babylonian, sometimes Assyrian, which is then actually directly, eventually, off of Sumerian. So you can understand why the Bible is wrong. Anyway, I asked, could you show me proof? Because clearly I can show you proof of the Anunnaki doing it. And the person wrote back saying the book of Genesis, which unfortunately that person really has no concept that the Anunnaki came way before. Sorry, the logic just doesn't sit right with me, because Jesus Christ, as you say, created Adam and Eve, which were the first humans. Obviously, forget the Anunnaki doing it, because we know that they did it. But let's go along with your assumption. Then, if they were the first humans and Jesus created them, who was Mary and Joseph? You can't say humans, because Adam and Eve was the first humans that Jesus created. So if Jesus' parents were human, then it all falls apart. Unless they were aliens or Neanderthal. Just doesn't sit right. So that's why you should always kind of go back to the original texts. I would suggest looking up Lost Book of Enki. I could help you go through the Sumerian text and explain, help you if you're really interested, but you're probably not going to want to know anything about aliens, I'm afraid. Any religious people, I need you to answer two very simple questions. So the first one here is, it says, within Jesus Christ's teachings, we find the plan for our happiness, our redemption, and our salvation. Now, Jesus came along 2,000 years ago. What about the people that were here 300,000 years ago? The humans, Homo sapiens sapiens. They never had an option for salvation. Why is it only when he turned up? I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. Please answer that one. And also, in the Bible, it talks about when the sons of God come unto them, the daughters of men, which basically they ended up having children with them, which we know from the original tablets. Forget the Bible. We know it was the Ajiji that came, and they were Elohim, alien race, also possibly known as the Anunnaki. But in terms of the Bible, etc., why does everyone talk about Jesus, but no one talks about these sons of God, which really infuriates me? Tell me why. Following on from my previous video about the so-called gods creating us humans, well, we obviously know that they're the Anunnaki. And here in the flood story, it talks about Enlil, Enki and Ninharshag fashioned the black-headed people. Watch my previous video if you don't know what they are. They also made animals multiply. Now, they could have been genetically created, just like us humans, or they could have been bred to multiply. But the flood story is interesting because here it says where Enki is saying he will try and prevent the perishing of my mankind, because he created them. And then you've also got where it says Genesis 40 days and 40 nights it rained. However, the actual flood story says it lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. So the Bible is a copy, but badly, of the original tablets. And you can find out more about this because I have a Patreon page where I read out these stories.
The ability to, blink in and out of space.
So Randy here was talking about Bigfoots and said that they're off-world creatures, which they are. They're not from this planet. However, the ones that stuck here are stuck here from at least 10,000 years ago. The problem I've got with his comment is when he says they can blink in and out of space, they can't. They cannot do that. And the reason why they can't do that is because when they're trying to scare people away by throwing rocks at people, shaking trees, doing tree knocks, howling, and hiding behind trees, if they can blink in and out of space, yeah, they would just disappear. We wouldn't see them hiding behind trees and throwing rocks at people. So, yeah, he was right up to a point, but I think he, just like some of the others, just add their own little element to things. Oh my gosh, look at this. This is the tomb of Osiris. No, it's not. A lot of people now are actually coming out, including some of the people that worked on that, saying no, they haven't actually found the tomb of Osiris. Now, if anyone knows their history, they know that Osiris was actually chopped up by Set, and his Osiris's wife, stroke half sister Isis, went and found his body parts, etc. So there would have been no time to have made a tomb, and there would be no point making a tomb thereafter, because obviously he was already chopped up in pieces, and his wife Isis ended up becoming pregnant using part of his body, you can guess which part, to impregnate herself. So I don't believe we will ever find an Osiris tomb.
because of the war between Set and Isis and her son Horus. Simple question for you. If you don't know the answer, I'll give you a hint at the end of the video. So, and this is regarding ancient buildings. Now, this one here is massive, and it was built by the Sumerian civilization, which would have been, in my opinion, the Anunnaki. So hopefully you'll answer at the end of this video what your thoughts are. Amazing building. Egypt, amazing building. Greek, amazing buildings. There's a point to this. Hold on. India, fantastic carvings that we can't even do today. Honestly, we can't. And Rome. But, for example, Australia doesn't have these kind of buildings. Why not? Because the Anunnaki were in the places that I've just mentioned. We've got written records of that. So, do you think it was normal people that built all these buildings in just so happens the same places where the Anunnaki were? Or do you think the Anunnaki created the builders? Keep watching my videos and I'll explain.
Pictures and the texts and things that we've seen, yes. But that doesn't...
This lovely lady is talking about some of the Anunnaki being reptilian. And if you heard there in the clip, she says, based on text. Now, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've never come across any text that say the Anunnaki were reptilian. Obviously, if you look at their statues and carvings, etc., none have scales like a reptilian. They're all, basically like us in their image. So if the person's listening, would you do me a favour? Only because I can't, I'd love to see it. Please don't show me David Icke or anything else like that. Please don't show me another researcher. You've said that it's in texts. Can you show me where it says that they're reptilian in race from the text, not from another researcher, please? As you said there, that would be great. I'd love to see that. Thank you very much. I could point this person to the 900 videos that I've done where I point to the Anunnaki using proof that they were here 450,000 years ago, or I could point them to Oxford University, etc., which also says the same thing. But I thought I'd just leave it to you guys to read this and post back to the person and let him know why the world is older than 6,000 years, unless you believe it's 6,000 years. By the way, there's a tree called the Melucifer, which is at least 5,000 years old. And underneath that are trees that have decomposed, which would have took thousands of years to do. So there's your 6,000 years gone already. But anyway, please feel free to post and let this person know why the world is older than 6,000 years and how he hasn't actually read the original text properly, because obviously if he did, he'd be agreeing with me. But yeah, so knock yourself out, everyone.
Is this a doorway cut into rock on Mars? Well, if you watch my previous videos, you'll see that I actually talk about the face on Mars, and that the face was actually cut out by the Anunnaki for the King Alalula that was ended up dying there and being buried inside that face on Mars, which I think there was a movie called Mission to Mars that sort of alluded to that. But if you're also interested to know when creatures died out on Mars, and I believe they did, using ancient texts, and I say ancient texts that where the Anunnaki were actually on Mars and describe Mars, if you're interested in that, I have it on my Patreon page. There's over 70 odd videos already. This one's 22 minutes long, and it's called Alien Life on Mars. So if you're interested, go to my Patreon page, have a watch of that. Thanks. My thoughts on how the universe got started after 40 years of researching ancient texts, ancient cultures, even more modern researchers such as Linda Moulton Howe, where she's spoken to top generals who have alluded to how our universe got started, even little greys, how they describe our universe and the source or creation instead of God. So, over the next two videos, this one and the next, I will explain it. So, just first, we have to rule out the Bible, because there are ancient texts that talk about Enki, Enlil, etc., which were brothers. So, straight away, that rules out one God. And they're the ones that's named in the actual tablets that the Bible copied from. Unfortunately, Enlil and Enki were called Lord and Yahweh and all these kind of different names throughout different times, and of course the Bible's copied. So watch the next video and I'll explain how the universe started. Second video on how the universe got started. Watch my previous video, as I totally rule out an almighty being, which with basically we've got the proof that that's not the case. So that just leaves, after 40 years of research, an alien race on their own planet created a device similar to our Hadron Collider, which created a mini universe. And we're probably going to end up doing that ourselves, so don't think it's too far-fetched. And in that mini universe was us, so that's how we started from a big bang. Now, it's possible that some people believe that we're in a simulation, etc. Now, these ancient temples here, or not even temple, buildings, supposedly, according to the locals, if you hum a certain tune, you can actually leave here through this doorway and end up in the place where the other aliens that actually created our universe are. That is how I believe the universe was created. Is this a carving of a dinosaur next to an elephant on an ancient Indian temple? Well, this gentleman here, who I highly recommend you should follow on YouTube, he's really good at looking at ancient buildings in India and finding things that people don't want to talk about. He's the person, one of the people that found the guns on ancient temples, which is quite amazing. So the question is this a dinosaur? Because obviously dinosaurs supposedly died out 65 million years ago. Well, according to the Ica stones, no, they didn't all die out. And according to the Cambro figurines in different location, again, I have debunked anyone that has tried to debunk these. So I've watched my previous videos, you'll see that I point out exactly where and why I'm right. And of course then you've also got the human footprints with dinosaur footprints. So could this really have been a dinosaur? If you're interested, I can tell you how long it could have took for the alien race to build the pyramid, the Great Pyramid. Now they're the Anunnaki, also known as the race Elohim. The reason why they built the Great Pyramid, if you watched my videos before, is because it was a light beacon that went up into space to help the other Anunnaki, when they came back round, to know that they'd moved from their normal position because of the Great Flood, that they couldn't go back there, so they set up a base fairly near here in Egypt to start with. So the maximum time it could have took them would have been 3,600 years, and that's because they collected the gold, that the Anunnaki collected the gold every time they came round near. So they would have had to have built this pyramid for the light within 3,600 years, so that the next time the Anunnaki came round, they would know where they are. Here's something amazing you may not have heard before about ancient aliens, and this is to do with the Anunnaki, who were in Mesopotamia. They had a spaceport, I think it was Sapur. And that spaceport made me wonder why they didn't have a spaceport down in South Africa where they were mining for gold. Why take the gold all the way up here and then have a spaceport there? Didn't make sense. Until I was listening to Josh Reeves on Coast to Coast. If you're interested, that's the, pause it and play it back, that's the video audio that I was listening to. And he'd been studying rocks, the massive types that we can't even cut today and lift, and he says that those have a certain energy, piezoelectricity, coming through them. So I'm wondering whether or not only here in Sapur could the energy from the earth create electricity through the stones to power the electricity on their craft. Otherwise it would be... My opinion on this guy that supposedly opened the portal and then advertised it on social media so that the government could come after him, yeah, great idea, not so much. And as someone that has done CGI for the last 20 odd years at least, I would say that was used something similar to After Effects. Now, if you notice, the background is about 6 foot high. In other words, the location that he's chosen to be the other place outside the portal just so happens to be the same height as someone with a camera that would have took the footage in the first place. So, you know, if it was pointing down at a different angle or anything other than just normal head height, I would have thought, interesting, but of course it's not. So there's my take on it.
Biologists and Native American Indians.
That's right.
They both got something in common, and that is
This person's talking about native Indians actually seeing the moon being dragged into position, which I have a problem with because, first of all, when you look at the moon and the tides that it brings, you can see quite clearly that that's how life would have started. Stagnant water on Earth wouldn't have created the life that we've got now. We would have needed some sort of tide, which would have dated back more than the 25,000 years that the Native Americans had supposedly seen it. Now, also, there's no written record, it's just verbal, and as you know, with native traditions, you end up with all sorts of weird things that they say. Not saying they're all wrong, but they do end up with some weird things. Now, we've got ancient texts that talk about the moon over and over, and even up to 450 odd years ago, when the Anunnaki first came here, they mentioned the moon. So I don't think the moon was dragged here.
The Nikola Tesla was brought to Earth as a baby from Venus.
Please don't think I'm knocking this guy that's doing the video. He's just talking about declassified, supposedly CIA documents that says Nikola Tesla was brought here as a baby from Venus. Now, the problem I've got with that is, he went to a different country, so he was, obviously his mother and father would probably disagree that he came from Venus. I've looked into Nikola Tesla quite a lot, and if he didn't go, yes, he was a smart kid, not saying he wasn't, but if he didn't go to America and meet Edison and work for Edison and work very hard in Edison's factory and learn a lot more, he would just be another person. So what did you see what I'm saying? There's no logic in him being from Venus, because if one circumstance where he didn't leave for America, he would just be a nobody. It wouldn't have affected us. And to be fair, although he did do some amazing things, he worked very hard at it, just like a lot of people do now. So that's my take on it. What's your take? Do you think he's from Venus and was destined to meet Edison and destined to do everything? Or was it just him working hard and, and his mum and dad gave birth to him here on Earth? This is a fair question, and I have to do a video to answer it because it's too long to type. So this was a reply that I got on one of my videos about where I believe the universe was not created by a almighty being, because the only reference we have to an almighty being is the Bible. That's it. There's nothing else. If you'd never read the Bible, then when people are touched by God, as this person says here, which I'll read now, what then is the enlightenment that people who are touched by God experience? So I say, when I hurt myself or when I see something amazing, I say, oh, Jesus Christ. Does it mean I believe in Jesus Christ? No. Does it mean I've been brainwashed? Yes, it does. So the only reference we've got to God of any kind is a Bible. Now, you take that Bible away. If we'd never had that, would people be saying they've been touched by God? No, they wouldn't, because they wouldn't even know what a God is. So what can they be experiencing then if they do have an experience? Well, let's look at the facts. Spirits are real. We know that. Anyone that's been to a decent medium knows that. Then you've got reincarnation, which has been proven by the Virginia University. Don't take my word for it. Go and check it all out. If you just do your homework, then you come to the same conclusion as me. If you don't do any homework, then what you end up with is people that go, not real, fake, mysteries, myths, everything like that. So we've got spirits. Spirits are real, and spirits are the ones that can sometimes save us, can sometimes talk to us subconsciously. And then you've got the guardian spirits. Now, there's no such thing as angel. Watch my videos. Angels are just messengers. I've totally proven that in one of my later videos, so feel free to watch that. There's no one's come back and said no, you're wrong, because they can't, because I'm right. I do sound big-headed, but I have to get the point across that when people's going to reply on this one saying, oh, I'm talking crap, just go watch my videos, and if you can debunk the videos, perfect. If you can't, then I'm not really talking crap. So really, the divine experience that people have, they associate with God simply because it's been drummed into them, but really it could just be a spirit helping them out. So just bear that in mind next time you say, oh, Jesus Christ, or oh my God. I don't believe in either of them per se, but I've been drummed in to say those words. So if I have an experience, I'd probably go, oh my God, but it doesn't mean it was God. So I hope that answers your question. This is going to freak you out. I've been sent this picture of what I believe to be sort of an American Indian, native Indian. Forgive me if I say it wrong. Now, you've probably seen these type of pictures on TikTok where they show old photographs of things that, you know, paranormal or aliens or Bigfoots, etc. in these old type pictures. Well, this one is one that I've just been sent, and it is very freaky. However, I have to let you know, it was done using computer AI in about 4 seconds. So what I'm just, again, trying to say is those pictures that you see on TikTok, take with a pinch of salt, because we would have seen them originally years ago on YouTube, and we didn't. We only now see them because it's very easy to do this kind of thing on computer technology, AI. So just bear that in mind when you see all those pictures. Here is a fact that's going to blow your mind about ancient Egypt and will make you distrust mainstream media and Rockefellers and all those kind of people. Okay, so here is a list of all the mummies that were found in tombs. Not pyramids, tombs. The list goes on and on and on and on. Okay, so how many bodies were found in pyramids? Because mainstream call the pyramids tombs. None. So then you could say, well, hang on a minute. How many tombs were there? There was probably a lot of tombs. So they've counted 118 in Egypt, which is where we're talking about. So, okay, well, maybe there's less pyramids then, because no, same amount of pyramids as there are tombs. So why would grave robbers leave all of these here and not take them, but yet take the ones from the pyramids? Pyramids were never tombs. Ancient aliens and the way they moved their stones and cut them. Now, in the past, people look at these stones, ancient stones with holes cut in them, and think, okay, was it astronomical? It's aligned to something, a star system, or was there a power wire going through that's decomposed now, which is why only the stone is left? And then I come up with an idea that I don't think anyone's come up with. And what if the ancients actually just wanted the core part of it, the cylinder that they actually then create? So we're looking at these thinking, what did they use these holes for? But maybe they just actually wanted a cylinder from a stone, just like this guy did here, and they cut it out. What do you think? Aliens, Anunnaki, or almighty being, it doesn't matter. I still get asked this question about when I mention the Anunnaki created humans in their likeness. They're 8 to 12 foot tall, though. I get asked, well, who created the Anunnaki then? That's how they go. So I explain that it's to do with chemicals. Now, everything is a chemical, believe it or not. And you can go and do your own research. Now, in a human male, they don't produce you-know-what to have a baby until they're 12. So there is no life form inside them until 12. So in other words, chemicals create the seed to produce life. And this is exactly the same as what it happens on other planets as well as Earth. Now, here, I'll just let you try and read that as I waffle on, but basically scientists have discovered how to create life with chemicals. Question for you. If you was one of the only few people that could read or write thousands of years ago with the very first language ever, would you write myths all the time? Literally, all the ancient texts are being described as myths. Or would you actually write something real? Now, if you was writing a myth, you would have had to have wrote the word Anunnaki then, which those from heaven or space, as we translate it properly, came to Earth. So you've now made a great myth about these creatures from another planet. Bearing in mind, thousands of years ago, you probably didn't even know what another planet was. Then you would have wrote a myth about he formed mankind, which means you're talking about yourself, that someone else formed. Obviously, the Anunnaki was Enki, and the goddess Aurora, which was actually Nimna or Ninharshag, same name, same person, who created the seed of mankind, and then goes on to create the Tigris and the Euphrates River. Would you have wrote all that as a myth, or is it real?
This is amazing. I know the sacred number that ancient aliens used for various things, and here on the Ancient Aliens program, in fact, they say that it's number 3. However, if you watch this one, it's number 12. And if you just look over here, this person says that number 4 resonates. So basically, all these different numbers, bearing in mind his person says archangels. I've proved in my previous videos that an angel is just an Anunnaki messenger. But the point I'm trying to get at is where people see numbers that repeat, in other words, 3 of this and 4 of that and 5 of that, take no notice. It's only us that are attributing, oh, well, there's 12 gods, there's 12 planets, there's 12 this, there's 12 that. Do you see my point? We just do that. And there's also 11 of something, there's also 6 of something, 7. We just do it. So ignore when people say a certain number. Are human women prettier than the Anunnaki alien race women? Now, I ask that because back then, Iana / Ishtar / Aphrodite was the prettiest of them all, and that was an Anunnaki. So, was she prettier than our prettiest women that we've got now? I don't know, but if we look back at old paintings of women, and when I say women, I'm not on about ones that may have transitioned. I doubt if they did back then, but hey, I can't be judged. So, yeah, are our women getting prettier now? I mean, here's a painting of a woman from 1876. What's your thoughts? Do you think our women are prettier than the Anunnakis? Would they come down? Would they let their sons of God, Elohim, come down and steal our women now? I don't know. You tell me. Are human men better looking than the Anunnaki alien race that created us humans? So here's just some images of some human men, and now here is the Anunnaki himself. 8 to 12 foot tall, so yes, that is a full-size goat, and they're very muscular. And here's another image there of an Anunnaki, and here is another one, and yes, that is a full-size lion because of the size they are. They did always end up having long hair and a beard, which was a stature for them as manhood. The Igigi that were the younger ones didn't have beards until they got to a certain age. And here's another carving. So are the Anunnaki males better looking than us humans that they ended up creating in their image? I'll let you guys decide, because I did one on the women and I kept getting told that the women wear makeup compared to the Anunnaki, which the Anunnaki women did wear makeup. The proof you need for mermaids. Now, the Anunnaki actually admitted that they created mermaids, and this is a cylinder seal that dates back to the Sumerian times, the oldest known advanced civilization. And as you see here, half man, half fish. Now, the Anunnaki also did cylinder seals with cyclopses, centaurs, basically all the creatures that they genetically modified. And Enki, the prince that created these, because he was the technical person, actually called us, the humans, his favourite creation out of them all. So, would another area like India also have hybrids? Well, have a look here. There's a half snake, half lady. Is it coincidence that this character here is 8 to 12 foot tall, and this would have been about 5 foot tall? As you see, the height difference. And that's because they were Anunnaki. I've been sent a link to this gentleman's video, and the person that sent it said, take him out. I'm guessing he means make him look silly. Now, I've done videos on giants before, so I'm not going to go over that. Obviously, if this guy doesn't understand anything about the Smithsonian destroying the skeletons in a legal court case, he'll probably say that's not a genuine document that shows that it was a legal court case and someone's knocked it up for a giggle. But anyway, so the point where I'm sort of just going to educate the person is he's talking here about this giant, and have a listen.
For this argument is there's a lack of proof, but the lack of proof doesn't mean that it's not possible. Let's examine this for a minute. Now, if giants were real, they would have to be a different race, and I'll explain why. They couldn't be Homo sapiens because we have so much variation in Homo sapiens that you just can't say that somebody who's tall is a giant. They're not a different race, they're just tall.
Okay, so the legal definition of someone who's a giant is 7 feet. So straight away, unfortunately, there's basketball players that are well over 7 feet. So you've got to be careful what you say, because obviously someone like me will just come along and point out that is a giant if you're over 7 foot legally. Now, you could argue, well, hang on a minute, what about dwarfs? Are they a different race? No, that's because in your psyche you're thinking of Dungeons and Dragons, when really people can be little people and giant people.
Tall. For example, the shortest person alive today is 61 centimeters tall, while the tallest person alive today is 251 centimeters today. That's a difference of 1.9 meters, essentially. So nobody's out here saying that those two people are different races. So we have a wide variety of heights within our species, is what I'm saying.
So why can't it be a giant then? Do you see what I'm saying? So you've just said that people can be very tall, but this can't be a Homo sapien. Why not? The giant definition is over 7 foot tall. So that's what we call giants. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Just you guys can figure out the rest. Breaking news about ancient Egypt. So 52-foot long Book of the Dead papyrus from ancient Egypt was discovered at Saqqara. If you don't know what the Book of the Dead is, go back and watch my videos. I did a 10-part video explaining who and what connection they had to the Anunnaki, the book. But it's quite frustrating here, because it's basically saying here the document was found within a coffin in a tomb south of the pyramid. Now straight away people think pyramid, tomb, there you go. But pyramids were not tombs. So if you carry on reading, you realise that it was near the pyramid, the step pyramid that we was talking about. But it starts here. The step pyramid was... So they've got no reason to talk about the pyramid other than to make us believe the pyramid was a tomb, when it was actually... the area around the step pyramid was used for burials. So again, trying to really make that pyramid tomb connection when there is none. Thank you for watching. Yeah, you can tell I'm getting wound up with this. The book called The Myths of Mesopotamia was translations of ancient Sumerian texts, and in it there's a footnote that says the 7 great Anunnaki, those from space, not heaven, that came to Earth, made the Ajiji, which were teenagers, so it's like you and someone else making a baby. Now, the word Elohim in the Hebrew, basically they changed the word to gods, or it should be gods, plural, go back to the Old Testament. Now, this is what winds me up. Ajiji are mythological figures, yeah? So that's mythological. However, when this is now in Genesis, when the sons of God, Elohim, in other words, the Ajiji, came unto the daughters of men, so that's fine, because it's in Genesis, but... the thousands of tablets that talk about the Ajiji in Sumeria are myths. What the hell? So religious people, start thinking outside the box. Stop looking at that, because that's where it's come from, these ancient texts. I'm wound up. Just giving a shout out to my own website, ourtruehistory.co.uk. I cover aliens, spirits, Bigfoots, all sorts of things, even dinosaurs. And you can watch it at ourtruehistory.co.uk with links, podcasts and videos, etc. And I thought I'd just mention that I do have a Patreon page that has different videos on there. You've got images there you can download, AI ones you can use for your own podcasts, etc. Live chat recordings that I've done, chats with guests, etc. And it's always being updated. So feel free to visit both Patreon page, which is Our True History at Patreon or on Patreon.